This episode was sponsored by our patrons, Dr. Blanca Bolea, Blair Struble, Kim Hokinson, Bree Smith, Robin Brown, Carrie Gilbride, Bree Alto, Cornelia Weiss, Siobhan Keenan, Jan-Elise Cannon, Chantel Oliver, Jamie Lang, Maria Sanchez, Amanda Gilmore, Jill Harrigan, Michaela Frew, Valerie Jacobson, Heather McKinnon, and Caitlin McTaggart. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We could not do it without you. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month to help us make more episodes. And get these episodes ad-free. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Katie.
It's June 11th, 1927.
Ooh.
Tacoma, Washington. And a parade is passing down the street. So the streets are absolutely lined with people who've turned out to witness the spectacle. Because the parade, it's not just on land, the parade is also on water.
Ooh.
Literally hundreds of boats are passing in procession. Everything from rowboats to sailboats, tugboats, yachts, huge launches, you name it.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, this is the largest parade on land and water that Tacoma has ever seen. And it is, in fact, a funeral.
Oh, not fun.
What kind of person could garner such a massive public honor?
Someone really great or really terrible?
Luckily, it's the former.
Okay, it's not a party, it's an honor.
This is, in fact, the funeral of an absolute nobody from nowhere. At least at the start. Thea Foss. She came from rural poverty in Norway. And over the course of her life, she took one ramshackle rowboat and slowly turned it into a booming maritime boat company, the largest west of the Mississippi, in fact.
Wow.
But it wasn't that made people love her, of course. It was her heart, her strength. It was the community that she built. You may recall that I teach a series of university courses on the meaning of life.
I do, yes.
And we explore the different answers to the meaning of life question over time. But one of the most common, most universal answers to the meaning of life question is community. So, over the past month, I have so enjoyed exploring this question through Thea Foss's story. How do you build community?
Well, that's a question that's been very much on my mind lately, so...
Oh, perfect! How could you build a community with such an impact that the city stages the largest parade ever to commemorate your impact? In this episode, we get to watch Thea Foss at work, and it is a sight to behold. In a floating house built of driftwood, in an industrial town that was rapidly becoming an environmental disaster, Thea Foss painted in bright white letters above her door, "Always ready." And in a nutshell, Thea Foss teaches us that's how you build community. Because in life, everything is going to come at us at some point. Opportunity, if we're smart enough to spot it. Disaster. Impossible success. Heartbreaking loss. And a whole community of people all along the way. And I guess we can all choose how to react to those people, like what to do with them. There are always people all around us. And every day we can help we can hinder, we can ignore, combat, resent, or connect. Thea Foss declared herself always ready to connect. I'm Katie Nelson.
And I'm Olivia Mickle.
And this is What's Her Name?
Fascinating women you've never heard of.
Speaking of community, let's go to a park right on the water and talk to a lovely human who is currently building community in Tacoma, Washington. She is both a historian and a park ranger, which is the ultimate nerd combo, I think. The envy of us all.
Okay. I'm Jennifer Trahan. I work for Parks Tacoma. I'm one of the regional park guides, part of the park ranger program. And then I also conduct programming like tots and babies on the trail hikes, and then also history walks. And I just try to highlight all of the parks that Parks Tacoma operates.
One of Tacoma's 65 parks is called Thea's Park, named after Thea Foss. And the waterway where her houseboat was for so many years is called the Thea Foss Waterway.
So we're at Melanie Dressel Park. It is part of the Thea Foss Waterway. The reason why I wanted to meet here specifically is right here where we're at. This is the first location of Thea Foss's houseboat.
Oh.
I began my visit to Tacoma there in the park, made possible by the wonderful Heidi and Andrew Hutchison. Wonderful human beings we met on What's Her Name tours. Now they've come on quite a few. I'll say it again. I just love how these tours connect us to people from all over the world. Tacoma is awesome. I had no idea. I can't wait to go back. Amazing place. Anyone from Tacoma or any part of the Pacific Northwest knows the name Foss Maritime. They're still a huge force on the West Coast, but not so many people know the story of Thea Foss, who was its founder.
Foss is a very predominant name. If you ask anybody who's Thea Foss, they might not know specifically Thea Foss, but they'll be like, oh, over there on the water. They'll know, they'll reference this is Foss, yeah. She also defines Grit City. That's our nickname for Tacoma, just kind of persevering, and I feel like just working hard and overcoming obstacles, and I feel like she nailed it. Everything that was thrown at her, she nailed it.
Thus begins the story of Thea Foss nailing it. Let's start at the start.
She was born in Norway.
She was born June 8th, 1857 in Eidsberg, Norway, which is a seafaring village south of Oslo. Later on, a Norwegian playwright, Kristin Lyman, who would write a play about Thea Foss, she described Thea's hometown as poorest, grayest, dirtiest Norway.
She grows up there. She has 8 siblings.
And over the course of her childhood, a disaster was basically unfolding across Norway. And the disaster was called the steamship. In fact, we talked about this a little bit in our episode, The Voyager, how the age of sail just ends with the construction of canals in 1868. It was a completely devastating event for Norway because these were a seafaring, shipbuilding, sail-making people. And suddenly, the world did not want their product. So, sailors, ship's carpenters, they were out of work by the tens of thousands. Norwegians are poverty-stricken. Here's a weird twist, because at the very same time that steamships have destroyed their livelihoods, those ships have also offered up a dramatic, possible future. Steam power made it so much easier to go to America. And the American dream had been made very popular by this best-selling pamphlet in Norway. Everybody read it. So this was Thea's dream and so many others. I will go to America. But at this point, she's 14. So, step 1 to get to America, leave school at age 14 and hire herself out as an indentured servant in Oslo to save money. Thea had 2 sisters. One marries a nice young man who happens to have 2 brothers. So there's this 3 sisters, 3 brothers. It's too perfect. Their fates are sealed. Mm-hmm. Thea's beau, his name is Andreas. He's a ship's carpenter. Such a useful skill, like guaranteed good income and plenty of work. At least that was the case for the previous 2,000 years. But suddenly, he's out of work. So Thea and Andrew share that American dream, as do their siblings. We'll all go together! Except, like most immigrant stories, they actually have to go one by one.
They're in Norway. They're like, yes, we love each other. Let's make a new life and go to the United States. So then Andrew leaves first. This is a great part too. I love this part when I learned this about her. So Andrew goes first. He lands in Minneapolis, and because there's a big Norwegian community there, and he saves up money, and he's like, I'm gonna, pay for the passage of my fiance and have her come from Norway and meet me here. Sends her home money. And he goes to the train station to go pick her up, and it's his brother. So she gave the money to his brother. And he's like, oh my goodness, okay. So he saved up again, sent the money back home. And he goes to the train to pick up his fiance the second time. And it's his sister. And she's like, no, I will pay my own passage.
And then she rolls up on the train under her own steam. She paid her own way. She's like, I'm not a mail order bride. I will make my own way to America.
Wow.
I love it.
She's like, I don't need you to pay my passage. So she was very strong-willed that way too. I was like, this lady, I love that. I do love that so much.
So they get married. Since they're in landlocked Minneapolis, Andreas puts his carpentry skills to work building houses. And they live there for 8 years among a large group of Norwegian immigrants. And in many ways, they maintain their Norwegian traditions, holidays, hairstyle. Her hair was down past her waist. She kept her hair up in a crown of braids on her head, for years. But they're also Americanizing very intentionally. They're like in Minnesota, there were so many Olsons.
I was going to say, Minnesota is still very Norwegian.
Still, yes. And that was their last name. So they changed it to Fossen, which means waterfall. And then later they'll shorten that to Foss. And Andreas becomes Andrew. Also, just the tiny matter of learning to speak and write English.
She didn't know how to read or write in English. This is another thing that is so awesome about Thea and just overcoming hardships and just learning and persevering.
Over these next 8 years, she's learning a new language. Andreas is building houses. Andrew is building houses. And they just eke out a living in Minnesota. In 1883, she's now 26, she has a baby. A girl, Lily Marie.
Aww.
And those first months are passing in a slow-moving blur, as the first months do. But when Lily Marie was 8 months old, she got pneumonia, and she didn't survive. She goes on to have 2 more children in Minnesota, boys, Arthur in 1885 and Waddell 2 years later. And she's pregnant with a third when Andrew and Thea decide to make a big move. He's a ship's carpenter, after all, and they don't live anywhere near the sea. They thought, what if they head to the coastal town of Tacoma, Washington, a growing hub for global trade? Maybe their luck will be better there. Thea's pregnant and has 2 toddlers, and they decide Andrew will go ahead and see if he can get work, and then Thea and the kids will follow the next spring after she's had the baby. He gets to Tacoma. There's no work in the shipyards, but there is work as a house carpenter. Mm-hmm. He's like, okay. So goes off to build houses.
He comes first, and when he said, we're ready, eventually she catches the train, the immigrant train. She has the 2 boys, the 2 older boys, and her daughter in her arms, and she's on this immigrant train.
The immigrant train was basically like, have you ever booked the super, super basic economy flights?
I was going to say, it's kind of
like that.
Cargo, right?
Yes, exactly. It's boxcars with wooden benches.
Oh.
And the trains are the lowest priority on the track, so they have to literally pull over for every other passing train, including cargo trains.
Oh.
Like, they are the bottom. So it takes a whole week in a boxcar on a wooden bench with a baby and 2 toddlers. The toilet was a hole in the floor.
Lowest priority, wait for everyone else, including inanimate objects, are more important than you.
So she gets off the train after trekking 3 kids cross country on the immigrant train. He guides her down to the waterfront, and he shows her this houseboat that he has made from driftwood and other lumber around the area.
This floating box constructed of driftwood and random scrap lumber, and he'd built her a houseboat on the water. Not unlike the boxcar she had just been traveling in for the past week, including the fact that the toilet was a hole in the floor that just dropped down into the water. He's like, ta-da!
Ta-da! You're going to be surrounded with water at all times with your toddlers.
Exactly. And the thing is, Thea Foss was absolutely terrified of water.
Oh, jeez.
She carried this fear her entire life.
She's just like, oh God, this is where we're at. But then says nothing because she sees how proud her husband is to have built this houseboat for her.
Before the day was out, both toddler boys had fallen into the water and had to be rescued by Andrew.
I refused to live in a house with a small stream because I was so terrified that my toddlers would end up in the water.
And she's in her mind, she's like, it's temporary. We're not going to live here too long. But they end up living there for 25 years on that houseboat.
In those first days and weeks, as we can imagine being forced to face your phobia and be like, this is where I live now. I mean, this is a lot to take in stride. For me, it would be like if I had to live in a tight, enclosed space as a claustrophobic. It would just be like,
nope.
How will I survive this? Yeah. What would yours be?
Well, I did. So when the first time we moved to North Carolina, I realized within 3 days that I was going to have to get tough or die because the spiders and the large flying insects and things I'd never seen before in my life that were 4 times bigger than you've ever imagined they could be was, And I did. I got over it eventually, but it was a pretty traumatizing first 6 months.
Well, that is a wonderful way to phrase it because it seems like that's exactly what she did. She had an extreme crisis of get tough or die, and she almost died.
So she actually falls ill.
They diagnosed typhoid pneumonia.
Oh, jeez.
And this just breaks my heart a little bit because it was pneumonia that killed her firstborn, Lily. And it's really bad. They don't know if she's going to pull through or not. And I imagine she's having that internal crisis. Do I want to pull through or not?
And she's bedridden, and Andrew's very nervous, and he's now taking care of the children. And they had no money to access any type of medicine or doctor. There was one doctor, though, out of the goodness of his heart, he did come and attend to her. And he didn't ask for any payment. He could see how they weren't very well off and that they were still struggling to just settle. And he pretty much cared for her until she got well.
Weeks where they don't know if she's going to survive or not. And he stays with her and pulls her through it and then leaves. The doctor never wanted to be paid. He just said, pay it forward when you're able. And when they became able, they sure did just that.
And so later on in their life, that's why they did a lot of donations to the hospitals in the region and just really took care of their community that way to just pay back for that hospitality that one doctor was able to give to them.
So, what was your phrase? Get tough or die.
Get tough or die. On a very minor scale, let's be clear. I mean, spiders.
Yours is witnessing bugs. At random.
I mean, spiders the size of my face in my yard, but,
Ew.
you know.
Okay.
But still not the same as, you know, living on a houseboat.
Living on the water with 3 small children.
I had a toilet. It was, you know, nobody got typhoid.
And then she gets better, and she's back on her feet. And then Andrew leaves, and he goes to Port Townsend because he got a job as a carpenter building a home there. And so she's by herself, she's down on the water.
So the story goes, along comes a disgruntled fisherman, that's the phrase, which I love, in a well-worn rowboat, cursing his luck, really cursing his boat. Blame the boat. It's the stupid boat's fault. I didn't catch anything. And he sees her in this random houseboat, and he says, I won't be needing this boat anymore. Would you like to buy it for $10? And Thea says, quick as a flash, I'll give you 5. Done! And now she owns this raggedy old rowboat.
She buys the boat for $5.
She paints it bright green and white, cleans it up, just makes it look nice, and sells it for $10.
Sells it for double. And so she started acquiring more boats, and then she started renting them out, and she started gaining quite a substantial fund doing this. And Andrew comes back from Port Townsend, he's like, look what I've made. And she goes, well, look what I've made. And she made more than he did in that month he was gone.
And Andrew's like,
Wow.
Wait, this is a use for my shipbuilding skills.
Yeah.
He's like, this is a substantial business. We should probably roll with it. And that was the beginning of Foss Maritime.
Soon they have a fleet of 200 rowboats, another baby on the way. They're renting out all these rowboats on a day-to-day basis. And first, it's the little boys, their own kids, who are their only employees. The kids' job was to bail out the rowboats when people returned them. Old-timers of Tacoma reported that if you couldn't afford to rent a boat, Thea Foss would give it to you anyway.
Aw.
And even though she did that, or maybe because of that, business is booming. And soon they need more help than just their 2 boys can provide. There's always new immigrants from Norway rolling up on the train. So Thea hires them. They have nowhere to live. They're looking for room and board. So Andrew builds a boarding house behind the houseboat. And soon they've got this lively community with sometimes as many as 30 workers who eat every single meal with the family Foss. And every bit of every meal for 35 plus people is cooked by Thea herself every day. And they start calling her Mother Foss.
Apparently she's a phenomenal cook. And one thing you'll see in the photo too, this one, she always had a sign that said always ready. And she always had coffee ready. She always had a warm pot of coffee. Apparently it was a gallon. And that was like the standard, a gallon of coffee always ready.
Which she would serve to anybody and have a chat. So ship's captains, where have you come from? What do you need? What are your stories? They always know if they go to Mother Foss, she will have a hot cup of coffee ready.
And she stayed up late to help everybody, not just the Scandinavian community, but also just the sailing community. And that was another reason why she was called Mother Foss, was because she was teaching all of these Scandinavian people English, and she was teaching, even as she was learning, she was still teaching them what she knew, and then also helping them to pass their national citizenship test.
They help them study for their citizenship exams, and they insist that everybody who works for them gain their citizenship in America.
Apparently she was quite the businesswoman, despite not having, any type of background in that. This Foss Maritime is like how she really developed a lot of her leadership skills and how she developed a lot of her business skills. And she would talk to men all the time, and they respected her. So she was a wonderful, like everything I read about her, there's no bad reviews on her.
She's making the best of a hard situation, and boy, is she lifting so many other people along with her.
She was just a wonderful mother, is how they describe her in every way. Not just the cooking, just everything. As a mother, I really relate to her, because when I was going to school in my undergrad, I was pregnant and having to do all the motherly things and work and go to school. And she was doing essentially the same things too. She was a mother. She was not going to like a typical school, but she was schooling herself. And then also helping her community and helping her family. And I was like, yes, I can relate to this woman. That's why I love her. Tacoma wasn't necessarily the cleanliest place. A Sarco was running down off of the Dune Peninsula area by Point Defiance, and it was a smelter that was just spewing tons of toxins into the atmosphere.
Yeah, Tacoma comes up a lot in my ecofeminism classes as sort of a notorious example of how bad things can get.
Yes. Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune, was from Tacoma.
Frank Herbert, he actually talks about you would walk outside and you could like chew air because that's how heavy and thick. The air quality was just terrible. And so that's how bad it was. And that was all just lumber mills. It was just because, we're the timber capital of, I believe, the world, at least in the United States. But that all was just timber companies. And so there's constant fires. Then she's now in it. She's living here. And this just adds to the anxiety of being a mother and having these two littles running around on the waterfront and with the trains in the back of them.
Yeah, I mean, the definition of a slow motion environmental disaster.
Yes. So I guess it should be, I must say that now, thanks to the Superfund cleanup starting in the, 80s or 90s.
Yay, love canal women.
Yes, yay, love canal women. Thank you, because you saved Tacoma indirectly. Tacoma is gorgeous. So, I've never seen a city invest so much in its parks. 65 incredibly wonderful
That's a lot of parks.
Yeah, amazing.
I think about Thea raising these kids, such anxiety being on the water. She has the trains behind her. And it was disgusting.
She has a third son, Henry, born in the houseboat in 1891.
And then they had a fourth, just 2 years after this. They had Henry Foss. And that's the individual a lot of people know, because we have the Henry Foss High School. He ended up becoming a mayor, and he was very involved in the maritime business as well.
Then came motors, like little motorboats. And suddenly, rowboats are out. Nobody wants to rent a rowboat anymore. This could spell disaster. But, of course, Thea is always ready. She goes, okay, it's time to pivot this business. Over all these years that she's been running this boarding house and feeding large groups of people, she has formed relationships with all kinds of food suppliers. And she says, why don't we offer to supply ships with food before they set off on their long voyages from Tacoma? And they're like, well, that's a good idea, Thea, except the legal point of entry for the U.S. is not Tacoma, it's Port Townsend, and Port Townsend is 80 miles away. So that's where all the big ships are landing and making their restocking arrangements. And Thea says, then we'll meet the ships at Port Townsend. They have enough money to buy one 2-horsepower naphtha motor. And they put it on one boat, and they named the boat Hope. And the older boys, who are now teenagers, like young teenagers, they're tasked with sailing up to Port Townsend anytime a boat is arriving. And their job is to meet the boat on the water and make a sales pitch. They quickly come up with a strategy. They sail up with a crate of Washington apples, which they offer as a freebie. Hey, here's some fresh fruit. Taste the quality. And then they make their sales pitch. We can provide you with all that and more. Come down to Tacoma. Mother Foss is waiting with a gallon of coffee. And they convince them to come to Tacoma to supply their boats.
Wow.
And it works. So now she is doing business with men from all over the world. This is a global port, and she's doing it with panache. Everybody knows and loves Mother Foss.
Wow.
When she'd saved enough, she decided to purchase a sort of sand lot next to the boathouse where she could keep some animals, kind of have like a micro farm, so that she could supply the food that she cooked for her workers and also the ships.
She did have a farm, like a little farm that had a cow, chickens, so that she was able to provide like eggs and milk to the sailors.
And this leads to my absolute favorite story about Thea Foss. She had a beloved cow, one single cow, her milk cow, Annie, who she would feed pancakes through the window of the houseboat. And Annie provided milk for the boarding house meals, but that was almost nothing compared to Annie's real skill.
This cow, it was funny. So if you ever are here during like winter season, fall season, it's pretty foggy.
All these sea captains know that they're headed for Tacoma now. They have that relationship with Mother Foss, and that's where they go to restock. But also, especially in the winter, the Pacific Northwest is just buried in fog.
And so one way that they would draw in the sail ships safely was they told them to lay on their foghorn.
She told the captains, just lay on your foghorn as you are drifting slowly through the fog, and you will hear us reply, and then you go toward the sound. So they're doing it. They're in the fog, potential shipwreck. They see nothing at all. They're laying on their foghorn. Nothing. They inch forward. And then finally, in the distance, they hear... And Annie, the cow, would respond to the foghorns.
Wow. That's amazing.
And when they laid on their foghorn, the cow, Annie, would moo and guide safely into the harbor.
Go to Annie, knowing they would soon be sitting with Thea Foss with a hot cup of coffee, safe in port.
Yeah. So I was like, that is so cute.
Wow.
Amazing.
Hey, but I need to go back to feeding pancakes to Annie through the... Is Annie in the water?
I guess the sand lot is like right next to
they're pulled up at the houseboat. And,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And she's feeding
just picturing
her
Annie like, waiting out to
receive
her treat.
There was the Panic of 1893, the famous economic disaster in the Scandinavian community. I mean, there was just total bankruptcy, and there was one Swedish family, the man of the house, he committed suicide, leaving a wife and 3 young children with absolutely nothing. Thea Foss took them in. She said, "Move in with me. For as long as you need. We have a house, we have food, we have everything that you need." And that was just like one tiny example of the kind of stuff she was doing all the time.
Mellom bakkar og berg ut med havet, hever nordmannen fenge sin heim. Der han sjøl hever tuftene grave, og set sjøl sine hus oppå deim.
So, I want to stop here and take stock. How is Thea Foss building community? Here are the things that I often hear people talk about today, or people think that they need today to build community, which she does not have and is not doing. She has no money. She has no privilege. She doesn't even have charisma or humor. Everybody talks about how she's soft-spoken, she's quiet, bordering on shy.
This is what I see a lot of, is Thea was described as quiet, caring, organized, and pious.
She's afraid all the time. Her life revolves around water that never stops scaring her. She doesn't found a nonprofit. She doesn't have a platform. She's never been to a leadership conference. She doesn't even have the draw of a beautiful, idyllic location in which to build a community. She doesn't have any of those things. What does she have? She has readiness, of course. She's always ready.
Always ready.
She has an open door. Ingenuity, for sure. And she lives where the people live. She lives among those people who need lifting. Literally, she builds a place for them to live. She makes really good food. Not fancy, very simple, but wholesome, homey, good food. She's done a fair amount of making do and letting go. She has coffee by the gallon. Maybe that seems to be a key ingredient. And later in life, remembering his mother, Henry Foss said this sentence, which I just love. He said that she had a sturdiness that is built only from courage. I love that. And I love just thinking of unpacking all those words. A sturdiness built only from courage. She's not the heart of the community for ego or for attention. She's quiet and shy. She hates it. She's being brave every single day of her life.
Wow.
Which I think is just awesome.
That's interesting, too, because I had figured if her sons are managing to convince these ship captains to come 80 miles down the coast to buy food from her, they must be fabulously charismatic teenage boys. But maybe they're not. I mean, there are many fabulously charismatic people whose parents are quiet and shy.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just a sturdy goodness that's coming through.
A sturdy goodness. Yes. She's also famed for being 100% honest. And I often think about like the way at least you see it community building presented today on social media. It takes a certain path, You're going to found a nonprofit. You're going to offer this service. You're going to fundraise from the wealthy. You're going to, like that you have to have a platform and you need your charismatic spokesperson, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. What if you just live among the people who need you and you just do your best and you be brave every day? Then you could do something incredible.
Og når liane grønskar som hagar, når det lavar av blomar på strå, og når netter ljose som dagar, kan han ingen stad venare sjå.
as the business grew, slowly, they finally moved onto dry land 25 years later.
Hallelujah.
4 Dock Street is where they lived. Now it's the docks. It's a museum. And they actually have 2 of Andrew Foss's boats that he built. They have in the museum there. It's right on the water. It's on the harbor, but it is dry land, so I don't know if it's much different than the houseboat. Probably not. They had a cottage that was attached to this very large building that they used kind of as a warehouse for their business headquarters. And they also sublet it to other maritime businesses. And in 1902, Thea was 45. She fell pregnant again. One of those...
The surprise baby.
Yeah. It was another longed-for girl. But stillborn.
Oh.
She named her Leela Minerva, Holy Wisdom. We don't have much from Thea Foss herself. There does exist a diary, but it is privately owned, and it's not like a diary of her thoughts. It's more just like keeping track of who came and went.
Daily calendar. Yeah.
However, there is one page of her diary in 1907 where it seems like she crystallized what she's about and what am I doing here. It's just gorgeous.
I will look at the whole world as my country, and all men as my brothers. We were made for cooperation. Say not, I will love the wise and hate the unwise. You should love all mankind. Let us not love in word and tongue, but in deed and in truth. Do nothing without a purpose, and let that purpose have some public end. The good man loves all men. He loves to speak with all. To those in which love dwells, the whole world is but one family. One should seek for others the same happiness he desires for himself. Glory not in thyself, but in thy neighbor. There is no higher duty than to work for others. This life is not for ourselves, but to help each other.
Then, disaster.
Tacoma Daily Ledger, July 5th, 1908. Foss boathouse burns to the ground. Andrew Foss rescues son from flames in burning boathouse. Weddell Foss, 22 years old, son of Andrew and Thea Foss, was last night rescued from the burning Foss boathouse. Shortly before 10 o'clock last night, as Weddell was about to close the office of the Foss boathouse, he heard a crackling noise. A few moments later, he discovered the building was on fire. Seizing a garden hose and forcing in a window, young Foss climbed through, and alone and unaided began fighting the flames. As he fought an uneven fight, a great volume of smoke choked him. He groped about on the floor upon his hands and knees, trying to find the door that led outside. Caught like a rat in a trap, with a hot fire raging about him and almost suffocated by smoke, young Foss was in a dangerous predicament. He was all but overcome when he discovered a hole in the floor. Placing his mouth to the hole, he drew in long draughts of fresh air, then called loudly for his father, who at first was unable to locate his son's voice. His father, assisted by a man named Johnson, chopped a hole in the side of the building and dragged him out of danger. The building, owned by Andrew Foss, is completely gutted. Foss carried no insurance. The total loss will amount to upwards of $10,000. The fire is thought to have originated from the defective wiring of the office of the Pacific Fisheries Company. The fire spread to the entire building and threatened the cottage that adjoins the boathouse. This cottage and its contents were saved. One of the ludicrous features of the fire was the successful attempt of Andrew Foss to save the 2 little pigs he had in a sty in the cellar portion of the building. After having carried the 2 squeaking porkers to a place of safety, Foss made a second attempt to save chickens he had behind the pigsty, but the flames drove him back. He seemed more worried that the little chickens had been destroyed than he did over the $10,000 loss of his uninsured property.
The irony is, for years, Andrew Foss had been petitioning the city saying, we really should have a fire boat, like a fire truck, but on the water, because we're unable to put out fires from the water. And you could just tap into the ocean and spray the water. Like, we really should have one of those. After this fire, then the city went, yeah, we should have one of those. Anyway, they rebuilt.
Then over time, as the industry changed, as the Puget Sound changed, that's when they went with the times and they started building the tugboats as well.
Tugboats are the thing, not little motorboats anymore.
Andrew, he did develop the tugboat.
Andrew puts his mind to tugboats and says, how could I build a better design for a tugboat?
Andrew was the one that developed that teardrop style for the tugboat.
Much more efficient and stable for tugging log booms, which is what they're tugging out of the Puget Sound. Wow. It's a tugboat design that's still used today. They could have patented it, and people told him to, but they refused. They said, the goal is the common good, not for us to get rich. Aww. We want people to use these safer tugboats all over the world. Isn't that awesome?
That's wonderful.
Thea Foss also founded the Daughters of Norway, which still is going strong in Tacoma and across America.
Wait, founded entirely Daughters of Norway?
Founded. So the very first branches were in the Pacific Northwest, and she was one of the founders of the Tacoma branch. There was one in Seattle and one in Tacoma. So
I've been to the museum founded by the Daughters of Norway in Seattle. My very dear friend is a member of the Daughters of Norway
Oh my
Seattle.
Gosh. Yeah, it's a huge deal. And back then, it's a support system, obviously, but it also was a life and burial insurance. If one of their members were to die, they would take care of that family and take care of the funeral expenses and things like that. Yes, she was one of the founders. And she, for the rest of her life, constantly hosting events, teaching classes, and hosting all kinds of things at their house. So her daughter Lillian, and Lillian was the baby who came across on the immigrant train, is growing up, and as she becomes a teenager, she's involved at the Daughters of Norway too. Her pet cause was the orphan boys of Tacoma, who all lived in what they called the parental school. This is an orphanage school for boys, and there's like hundreds of them. Lillian loved these boys. She'd take them on excursions. She'd fundraise to buy them books and shoes. And like she really dedicated her life to giving those orphan boys a chance. But as Lillian entered her 20s, it was clear that her health was declining really fast. Tuberculosis.
This was her only daughter. And so when she passed, Thea lost a little bit of herself. And Henry talks about that, and just that was her joy, that was her light, to have a surviving daughter. And then she lost her, I think she was early 20s or so when she passed. And so he talks about how the light kind of just diminished when she passed.
Thea and Andrew kept up the annual picnics and excursions for the parental school for the rest of their lives, which they said was the best way that they knew how to honor Lillian.
Henry Foss eventually did take it over. Him and his brothers continued the company. Foss Maritime is still in operation today.
When Thea herself died in 1927, the city of Tacoma came out in droves to honor Mother Foss. The newspapers referred to her as one of the pioneers of the city, which I found really interesting. and describe her, of course, as well known by all. And here's an interesting epilogue. Witnessing the staggering parade on land and sea was one Norman Riley Raine, who was visiting Tacoma for the year as a visiting professor at University of Washington. And he says, "What is this, Mother Foss? Tugboat Empire? Tell me more." And he sends off a story to the Saturday Evening Post, of course, one of the biggest publications in America at the time. And his account was so popular that the Saturday Evening Post asked for more and more. He's all too happy to oblige. He sends story after story. Hollywood reads the stories and is like, this would make a great movie. The thing is, though, by the time it had made it through all the filters of Norman Riley Raine himself, all these different editors, there was literally nothing left that resembled Thea Foss in any way. But still, Hollywood's smash hit Tugboat Annie came out in 1933.
Oh.
Yes. And by the time Hollywood was finished with it, Annie was an Irish tugboat she-captain, outspoken, a little bit crass, this fearless adventurer on the water, you know, giving people a piece of her mind. And Irish. I mean, nothing could be further from Thea Foss.
Okay, hold on a second, because, yeah. Tugboat Annie, starring Marie Dressler, whose career was made by screenwriter Frances Marion, who said, we need to be writing movies for this woman. She's brilliant. She's funny. Maybe funny women could star in movies instead of just wayfish ingenues.
Oh my gosh. Well, I wonder if Frances Marion's advocating for funny, strong, sassy women is what made Tugboat Annie become that instead of just good, kind, shy Thea Foss.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it became a vehicle for Marie Dressler.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's
so
wonderful.
it's such an interesting twist because like we can see what Frances Marion was doing with screenwriting. We need strong, sassy women. Whereas the Foss family, I mean, this movie came out 6 years after Thea Foss had died. And when they saw it,
I'm sure they were
like,
furious.
What? Yeah, like this is what a mangling of what Thea Foss was. Wow, both those parallel stories going on at the same time. I mean, and it was such a smash hit. There was even a sequel, Tugboat Annie Sails Again, featuring one Ronald Reagan, who would go on, of course, to be president of the United States.
Wow.
Amazing.
She really did enjoy serving her community. I wish I could have met her.
The real Thea Foss was quiet, humble, soft-spoken, and afraid. Afraid every day of her life, but also with the sturdiness that comes only from courage. I came across this quote last night. It just feels like synchronicity. And the quote said, let me get it. Ready is not a feeling. Ready is a decision. What an amazing form of wisdom. To declare oneself always ready for whatever comes. Whatever is coming, I'm ready. And by doing that, Thea Foss built a community in a dirty, polluted, half-despairing city, creating a legacy that is alive and well even today.
The desire for community. She was just constantly trying to bridge those gaps in building community, especially for the Scandinavian community. But it didn't stop there, and you can tell in her journal too, she just wanted to bring everybody together on all levels. I think we all have that in common, especially right now as things are the world's on fire a little bit, so. So we are trying to hold on to each other and lean on each other.
Special thanks to Jennifer Trahan at Parks Tacoma. If you live in or near Tacoma, check out all of her amazing programming as she's building community in Tacoma today. You can visit Thea's Park and Melanie's Park in Tacoma, which is the 2 locations of her houseboat, and the Maritime Museum, which has a couple of boats built by Andrew Foss. This episode was made possible by Heidi and Andrew Hutchison and recorded on site by Mark Nelson. Thea Foss was voiced by June Kuntz, and our newsreel was read by James Henderson. Music for this episode was generously shared by Kevin MacLeod, Travelator, the Mini Vandals, Jockers Dance Orchestra, and traditional Norwegian songs from the Library of Congress National Jukebox Collection. Our intern is Katie Boucher, and you listeners are most important of all. Thank you so much for donating, and thanks for listening.